Well, good morning, fourth hour. Let's talk about what we're doing today. As per usual, when I talk about what we're doing, you are more than welcome to open up your week 3 work. So you have it all ready for answers as we go. So what you can expect this week is you are writing the final draft of your introduction speech, practicing it, and performing it. So the first thing on here that you can see in red is let myself or Ms. Grindy know if you're going to perform in class either day. There's some time at the end today if you'd like to do that. If you don't choose to perform in class, of course, your option is to film. All right. So that's an overview of what we're doing this week. So I'm going to go over the checklist, the schedules. I'm going to teach you how to make a final draft, like what it should look like. And I, of course, will have an example. And I'm going to talk to you about how to best practice. So you should be able, by the end of this hour, to have a good chunk of the prompts on your week 3 handout done. Day 2. Now, you folks aren't in day 2. So if you want to get this information, I suggest you either log in or you can watch the video, and I'll put it right in the week 3 folder. So I'm going to review that day how in-class performances work real briefly, and then most of the hour is going to be open for folks to either perform in class if they wish or to film their performance. Either way, they're due Friday at midnight. Okay. I keep hitting the wrong keyboard. So silly. All right, so here's the same idea, but in checklist form for you. You all should have gotten from me a grade message with your current grade, and I tend to send those out regularly so students have another opportunity to ask for help. I found that sometimes people are failing, they just need a little prompt. And those who are getting A's also need a little, hey, look at you, nice job. So the schedule for this week, not much different. You already know we missed Monday. Going to have open office hours to help you as per usual today during 6th hour and then Thursday and Friday. One thing that's different this week is I won't have open office on Wednesday. And the reason is, hooray, I get to go get vaccine number 1. So I'm feeling pretty lucky about that. Let's see. So just talk about this briefly. So last week you took a vote on whether or not you wanted a story every week. And this needs to be updated. I've gotten a couple more yeses since I posted this. So it looks like enough for a yes. I phrased that horribly. Anyway, so I'll start those next week when we have a full week. Again, these are not graded. They're mostly for funsies and for an example for you folks. In the meantime, I have organized my YouTube page, my channel, if you will, so that it's easier for you to use it. The CTAs are in one playlist, and then the Sp1 videos are in a different playlist. So that's another resource for you. I've included the link on here to get to that YouTube if you could use those resources. Reminder, so when I grade your performance this week, it's a formative assessment. Our future end speeches will be summative, but since you haven't done this yet for me, we're going to do this as formative. So again, I'm grading you first on performance. So are you within the window of 1 to 3 minutes? Have you made a start on eye contact and gestures? And if you're filming it, you might be wondering, well, how do I make eye contact? You look at the camera. Every so often, you look at the camera. It often helps to imagine. I imagine someone on the other side that I know and enjoy, whatever works for you. It feels a little weird at first. You'll get used to it, like most things. Second way I'm grading you is content. So did you include your name? Have you applied info that you learned from science and speech? Now, I don't mean have you written in there what you learned from science and speech. I'm not requiring that. You can if you're running low on things to talk about. What I mean is, have you included deep breathing for yourself to deal with that amygdala response? Have you added examples that are vibrant in imagery and connection to you to help release that oxytocin in your audience? That kind of thing. So that's the 2 main ways I'm grading you on your performance this week. So here's where the week 3 notes start. And there's a reason why we got Mr. Benedict here. This is him playing Sherlock, and I'm going to be teaching you a memory trick called the memory palace, which is an ancient memory trick, but one of the many ways to help you remember what you're going to be talking about. If you've ever seen the show Sherlock, he references his memory palace quite a bit, and they show it in an interesting way. So here's how you best make a final draft. Some tips for you. So I've found it helps. I've found that speech is different than other writing. In other English classes, you go from draft to draft. It kind of goes like this. In speech, the process kind of goes back and forth. For example, you'll write a rough draft and then you go to practice it and realize that the words I had written down don't come out of my mouth quite right. Or if there's a word you're stammering on, change that word. So a lot of times you practice from the rough draft to find the timing, and then you start the final draft. The final draft in speech is always going to be whatever you're going to use the day you actually perform. So in my case, I use note cards. And I do this for all my classes so I can keep them straight and so I can check off when I've done certain things. For speech, it works really well if you use note cards that are in bullet point style, also known as short word. In other words, write as little as possible to help you remember that part of your speech. The reason why is when people have a script, they tend to read off the script. So you want to make your final draft read proof, in other words. I would also suggest write it big. So a lot of times when students actually make these final drafts, they find they don't need to use them because the process of writing it down again in this format helps you remember it. But if you should need it, if it's large and clear, you can just kind of look down and see what you need to remind you. Don't be worried about taking pauses every so often to take a deep breath and to look down at your note card. That is absolutely fine. Einstein said time is relative. It truly is. When you're the person who's in the audience, time isn't as long or as slow as it may be of the person speaking. So it may feel like your pauses are going on too long. I'll let you know if they are. Typically, first-time speakers go too fast rather than too slow. If you're filming, instead of using note cards, you can choose to use Post-its. Some folks find it very useful to have that in their eye line. So if I was doing that, I would have a Post-it like right there. So while I'm looking at my script, I can just quickly make eye contact back to you. If you're using note cards, number them, because often what happens is when we get nervous, we start shuffling them and you don't want them out of order. You want to be able to see quickly if they're out of order rather than having to read the whole thing. Keep in mind as well that when you're performing, because you're having that amygdala response of knowing that eyes are going to be on you or having eyes on you, that you may forget things that are in your final draft. That's okay. I am never grading you to see, oh, does your performance match exactly with what you handed in? I'm never grading you that way. That's not how speech works. Anytime I tell a story, it's different every time. That's just how the brain works. The brain will connect to something else at that time and just add something in. That's okay. Be open to that. So here's an example of a final draft. So it's just real short word. And this would be my actual speech. If you haven't had a chance yet, on YouTube is an example of this speech, me performing it using these note cards so that you would have an example. All right, so that's what final draft looks like, short word. There's different tips for whether you're going to film or whether you're going to do it in class. If you're filming, make sure you know where the mic is and be close enough to it so your voice can pick it up. Also, if you're aware of where the mic is, you're less likely to like rustle things. If you're like moving around a lot of times the mic will pick that up and it sounds like an annoying like tap, tap, tap in my ear when I'm watching. It helps to rewatch your video as well. So if you see something that's gone awry, redo it. That's the perfect part about filming. You can redo it, you can edit. I don't mind if you have parts where you edited. Like if you took like, wow, in take one, I had a really good intro, but the second time I filmed it, the ending is really great. Can I put those together? Absolutely. The whole point is for you to learn how, and that means playing with it. If you're filming, it's okay if you're sitting. You can be in a comfortable position, but make sure that you're sitting straight up, you have good posture. That way your voice is going to be more clear and you can gesture. Film it so that I can see at least the top half of your body, so I can see your eye contact, your gestures, and how you're doing with posture. Like I said, you can rewatch and re-edit. So that's a pro of filming. One con of filming is a lot of us don't like how we look or sound on camera, and that's okay. We learn to get over it, especially in this day and age. So if you perform in class, I would really suggest you use your phone as your timer. Click on the clock on your phone, and that'll show you where the stopwatch function is. Whether you have Apple or Android, that's how that works. You can absolutely have your phone right up next to you when you're performing at the podium or the cart. You can use both. Before you start speaking, set yourself up. I don't start timing until you start speaking. So if you need a moment to lay your stuff out and get your phone ready and kind of take a deep breath, do that. One pro of performing in class is once it's performed, you don't have to see it again. It's done. One con is dealing with nerves and possible interruptions. You can always request a restart. So if something goes wrong or you just need another shot at her, can I restart? Always. You can always restart because the goal is for you to learn. Couple more tips, writing your introduction speech, or at least making sure that you have it all ready. It helps to practice from your rough draft, like I said, so that you know the timing works. Okay. Oh, I already said these. Bizarre. All right. So practice tips. It really helps when you're practicing it to practice it as if you are performing it, and do it from start to finish. Don't start, go get a snack, come back. Don't do it that way. It helps if when you practice, you visualize it going well. So picture a receptive audience. Usually that's going to be me. So picture my face like nodding and smiling at you, if that helps, or a friend enjoying your speech. That way, you are more likely to do well. That sounds silly, but just visualizing it while you practice, visualizing it going well tells your brain, anticipate this going well. I got this. Our brains pretty much do what we want them to do with practice. The other thing I would suggest, so I said you should practice it the way you're going to perform it. That has to do with muscle memory. So for example, if you plan on performing it in front of the class, I would practice it quick in the class, standing up, just like you would in class. If you're going to film it at home, practice it the way you plan to film it. Muscle memory, and those who are in athletics know this, the more you practice a skill, the more the brain and the body remembers it automatically the next time you do it, right? So the more you practice, the easier it is to get those gestures in, to get your voice down, all of that. Now it's up to you how you prepare for your practice. You got two main approaches. You can either familiarize, that means you practice to know the main points. It doesn't matter if you're missing some phrasing, just main points. That's the one I suggest mainly for people. But every year I get folks who are like, I'm going to memorize it. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to memorize it, which is option 2. This is where you practice it to get the flow and the phrasing of the words down. It is more challenging to memorize. A couple things you can do to memorize, and I'll teach you a technique to do it. Tools help practices very much with memorizing and with timing. So some tools you can use: your stopwatch and your timer on your phone, as I said, filming yourself and when you're watching it, that's using tech to help yourself. And then there's about a zillion calming or anxiety apps out there. I really suggest you find one you like so that before your speeches, you can go through the activities on there and get calm. Okay, so here is a memorization technique. Like I said, it's ancient. It's called the memory palace. You can try this out if you want to challenge yourself. It works in other subjects too, of course. So this is great for science, for instance. I use a lot of this for college science, college physics specifically. So what this is you assign your main ideas to a place you know well, or the place where you're going to perform, where you have to recall the ideas. So this is another visualization technique. So you give each idea a visual in your mind and you see it in its spot. So for example, if I do Memory Palace with my apartment, I could walk in, kitchen's right here. So I'll put my first idea in the kitchen. I picture an image that fits that first idea. So let's say I'm studying for a physics test. My first idea could be, all right, Newton's laws right here. So I could picture Newton with the silly apple on his head. And then I do that for each room. And I do it in sequence if I have to remember things in sequence. So if I'm doing this for a speech, I could, if I do this with my kitchen, I go, okay, introduction, kitchen, say my name. So I picture the word name. And then I can move on to, okay, now I come through the kitchen into the living room and I picture my main point, number one, which is my siblings. So I picture a picture of my siblings. Like I said, it does matter what sequence you do. So if you want to do this for the classroom, when you practice your speech, you imagine each part of it in different parts of the classroom. And it helps to start on one side and then go to the other. So here's a visual of what memory palace looks like, or memory technique, or memory castle. It's called so many things. On your resources in the slides, I also have videos of how to do this, and generally some warm-ups, how to practice, how to get yourself ready for this speech. It's got some resources there for you. All right, so at this point, I moved all my cards because I showed shuffling. That's why you got to label them. That's important. So at this point, I want to show you real quick on your handout how some of this is going to look. So you get 5 points for final draft and practice prompts. And then here's the grading of the speech itself. So that pacing, performance, and content. So you have a choice for your final draft. If you want, you can write it right on this template that I have included for you in your week 3 handout. Or if you want to use note cards or some other form, like some students just like to write it on a piece of paper, that's fine. Take a picture of it and submit that with your work. I've had students in the past who put the image right in the handout so I can see it. So if you choose not to use this template, you could easily just put the picture of what you do use right over it to make sure I get that. Okay, for practice prompts, so I went over a couple of different things you can do to practice. Here you just write either which two seem the best, summarize what you learned, or what you're going to try out when you get ready for the speech. And then the final task this week is performing your speech. So at this point, I'm going to stop talking so that you can do a couple of things. Make your final draft, decide how you're going to perform. If you want to perform today, there is still time. Let myself or Ms. Grindy know. All right, so use your time, get yourself ready. I'll be in the meet if you need me. Go for it.